Welcome. Today is Ash Wednesday, and we're so happy to have you on day 1 of Lent Daily.
Yeah, this is going to be an incredible journey. As we go through these 40 days, we're going to be journeying through hell, heaven, purgatory, and what the saints experienced, their mystical visions, their apparitions, and what can we learn from these experiences, and what does the church teach, and what does the doctors of the church teach. So thank you for joining us. Today is day 1. We're starting with hell because I'm a melancholic. And we're going to give 10 episodes to hell. Today we have 2 incredible stories for you regarding people's experience of hell and what can we learn from them. But first, what does the church teach regarding hell?
What is hell? The Catechism says, it's a state of definitive self-exclusion from communion with God and the blessed.
So what the church teaches is that it's a definitive state of self-exclusion, meaning that it's by our own free will, we have chosen to remain outside of the friendship of God. And this is the worst abuse of one of the greatest gifts God has given us, and that is free will. That is the greatest abuse that one could think of, is to use one's free will and say to God, I do not want you. And when we die, the state in which we die is solidified for all eternity. So in other words, when we die in the state of grace, this is solidified for all eternity. And if we die in the state of mortal sin without God's grace, it is solidified for all eternity. Now, the dogma of hell is that it's a dogma. So in other words, as Catholics, we can't say, well, I want to believe in heaven, but I don't want to believe in hell. To be a faithful Catholic, no, that's not how it works. To be Catholic means that we accept the dogma of hell. Now we're going to transition here into private revelation, which as Catholics, we are permitted to believe, not bound to believe. Meaning that we have to believe in the dogma of hell and what the church officially teaches, but then we have all the saints and the doctors, and they have these mystical experiences, and these are private revelation. That means we don't have to believe them. But when it comes to the saints' experiences, and they have been sufficiently authenticated, and we don't believe them, this seems to me an offense against reason. Meaning if the church has gone through this and they find no objection and there's all the eyewitnesses and all these things that kind of line up, not just a private person's word, but a whole bunch of things line up, then we have sufficient evidence to believe in it, then it seems to me not to believe in it is an offense against reason. So with that, we have for you the first of 2 amazing experiences regarding hell. Now, this first story comes to us from a book called The Dogma of Hell. In it, the author makes the point that this story of St. Francis of Jerome has been given sufficient evidence, a lot of evidence to the validity of it. It was, he says, juridically approved through the process of canonization. It was seen by a large number of eyewitnesses who were also under oath. So this, for me, falls under the category of sufficiently authenticated. And so with that, here's the story. In 1707, St. Francis of Jerome was preaching out in the streets. Now, St. Francis of Jerome was a Jesuit, and he's out by Naples, and he's preaching in the streets in this town. And in this area, there's a woman named Catherine, and the villagers nicknamed her Saint Catherine because she was anything but a saint. And this particular day, he's preaching about hell and being constantly interrupted by this woman. Then he turns to her and says,
Beware, my daughter, of resisting grace. Before 8 days, God will punish you.
Well, this woman continues to mock St. Francis as he preaches in the streets. 8 days later, he returns and asks where the woman is. Because he's in the area and the door is shut, the shutters are closed, and there is no mockery coming to him as he preaches. And they tell St. Francis that she has died just hours earlier that day.
Died, he repeated. Well, let her tell us now what she has gained by laughing at hell. Let us ask her.
St. Francis then took a large number of people and went to her death chamber. He unveiled her face and commanded the corpse, Catherine, tell us, where are you now? To everyone's horror, the corpse lifted up her head, and with a look of despair, she cried, "In hell. I am in hell." Then her body lay lifeless once more.
I was present at that event, says one of the witnesses who deposed before the apostolic tribunal, but I never could convey the impression it produced on me and the bystanders, nor that which I still feel every time I pass that house and look at that window. At the sight of that ill-fated abode, I still hear the pitiful cry resounding, "In hell, I am in hell."
So our second story comes to us from
Bishop de Ségur from France, and he wrote a book called L'Enfer, which means the hell.
So to put it in context, he died in 1881, and this is a story that was told to him from his grandfather. What I find interesting about this story is I did some digging and found the original source of this book, a PDF, and it's in French. And so I needed Janelle's help here in translating, but the opening part of the book, in fact, the first page has something very interesting before we get to the story that I think will pique your attention.
So this is a letter from Pope Pius IX, and he writes this at the beginning of the book. Bien-aimé fils, salut et bénédiction apostolique. My beloved son, greetings and apostolic blessings. Nous vous félicitons de tout cœur de ce que vous nous cessez de remplir. We congratulate you wholeheartedly of what you have accomplished. Sur une si vaste échelle et avec tant de succès, on such a scale and with so much success, votre office de héros de l'Évangile, from your office that heralds the gospel. Tout ce que vous publiez se répand aussitôt dans les rangs du peuple par milliers d'exemplaires. All that you have published is expanding quickly to the ranks of the people by thousands of copies.
So can you imagine, first of all, publishing a book, but then getting the Pope to write a letter of endorsement at the beginning of your book? It's quite the accomplishment. But I think what this does, it leads to a level of trustworthiness regarding what's in the book, which this story that we're going to share with you is contained in. So, the story.
Bishop de Ségur writes, "It was in Russia, at Moscow, a short while before the horrible campaign of 1812. My maternal grandfather, Count Rostopchine, the military governor of Moscow, was very intimate with General Count Orloff, celebrated for his bravery, but as godless as he was brave. One day, at the close of a supper, Count Orloff and one of his friends, General V, also a disciple of Voltaire, had set to horribly ridicule religion, especially hell. Yet, said Orloff, yet if by chance there should be anything the other side of the curtain, well, took up General V, whichever of us shall depart first will come to inform the other of it. It is agreed? An excellent idea, replied Count Orloff, and both interchanged very seriously their word of honor not to miss the engagement. A few weeks later, war broke out, the Russian army began to campaign, and the general received order to take an important command. He had left Moscow about 2 or 3 weeks, when one morning, at a very early hour, while my grandfather was dressing, his chamber door is rudely pushed open. It was Count Orloff, in dressing gown and slippers, his hair on end, his eye wild and pale like a dead man. What, Orloff, you, at this hour, and in such a costume? What ails you? What has happened? My dear, replies Count Orloff, I believe I am beside myself. I have just seen General V. Has General V then come back? Well, no, rejoins Orloff, throwing himself on a sofa and holding his head between his hands. No, he has not come back, and that is what frightens me. My grandfather did not understand him. He tried to soothe him. Relate to me, he says to Orloff. What has happened you, and what all this means? Then, striving to stifle his emotion, the Count related the following. My dear Rostopchine, some time ago, General V and I mutually swore that the first of us who died should come and tell the other if there is anything on the other side of the curtain. Now, this morning, scarcely half an hour since, I was calmly lying awake in my bed, not thinking at all of my friend, when all of a sudden the curtains of my bed were rudely parted, and at 2 steps from me I see General V standing up, pale, with his right hand on his breast and saying to me, There is a hell. and I am there." And he disappeared. I came at once to you. My head is splitting. What a strange thing. I do not know what to think about it. My grandfather calmed him as well as he could. It was no easy matter. He spoke of hallucinations, nightmares. Perhaps he was asleep. There are many extraordinary, unaccountable things and other commonplaces which constitute the comfort of free thinkers. Then he ordered his carriage and took Count Orloff back to his hotel. Now 10 or 12 days after this strange incident, an army messenger brought my grandfather, among other news, that of the death of General V. The very morning of the day Count Orloff had seen and heard him, the same hour he appeared at Moscow, the unfortunate general, trying to learn the enemy's position, had been shot through the breast by a bullet and had fallen stark dead. There is a hell, and I am there. These are the words of one who came back. And again, this is the story of Bishop de Ségur, who heard it from his grandfather, and it was written in his book, L'Enfer, the Hell, endorsed by Pope Pius IX.
Those are our two stories for today on hell. Tomorrow we're going to look at St. Teresa of Avila, and very telling tomorrow from the Doctor of the Church. We find it fitting also, though, to end each episode with a prayer. This prayer comes from St. Alphonsus.
O my Jesus and my Redeemer, who will one day be my judge, have pity on me before the day of justice. Behold, at thy feet a deserter, who has often promised to be faithful to you, and has as often again turned his back upon you. Forgive me, O Lord, for I desire truly to change and amend my life. I am sorry, my sovereign good, for having despised thee. Take pity on me.